In a busy cafe, the air was filled with the warm aroma of fresh coffee and the soft buzz of chatter. It was a typical day, but one that would soon change. The door opened and an elderly woman, Shpi, slowly walked inside. At 89, her body was frail and the signs of age and hardship were clear. Her clothes were old and torn, and her shoes had seen better days, barely protecting her feet from the cold. She made her way through the cafe, her steps slow and unsteady. The other customers eyed her, some whispering, others staring with disapproving looks. Shpi ignored them, her hunger pushing her forward. She reached the counter, her hands trembling as she fumbled for the coins she had left. "I just want the cheapest sandwich, please," Shpi said softly, her voice barely audible over the low hum of the cafe. She placed her few coins on the counter, hoping it would be enough. Marcella, the cafe owner, looked at her with a cold, judgmental stare. Her arms crossed, she scoffed. "This isn't a charity, old woman. If you don't have enough money, then leave," Marcella said sharply, making the elderly woman feel small and invisible. The surrounding customers chuckled quietly and Shpi's heart sank. She felt humiliated, her dignity slipping away. But she had no choice but to ask, hoping for a little compassion. Isabella, a wealthy and elegant woman, sat at a table in the cafe, sipping her coffee. Her eyes were drawn to the scene unfolding at the counter. She watched as the elderly woman, Shpi, was being treated with cruelty by Marcella, the cafe owner. Isabella's gaze softened as she noticed the frail woman's struggle. Something in her heart stirred. Without hesitation, Isabella stood up and walked toward the counter. As she approached, the noise in the cafe seemed to fade away, all eyes on her. Isabella's presence was commanding, her confidence clear as she stood tall beside Shpi. "Excuse me," Isabella said in a firm yet calm voice, addressing Marcella. "This woman deserves to be treated with dignity, not cruelty." Her words were sharp, but her tone remained composed. "I'll pay for her meal," she added, making it clear that the elderly woman would not be humiliated any longer. Business is important, but humanity comes first. Marcella, who had been so cold and dismissive, now seemed unsure, her posture shifting as she tried to regain control of the situation. But Isabella wasn't finished. She gently turned to Shpi and smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, your meal is on me today." As Isabella spoke to Shpi, her eyes fell on the watch that the elderly woman was wearing. It caught her attention because it looked familiar. As she looked closer, her heart skipped a beat. It was the same watch she had given to someone she once loved, Emmanuel. The realization hit her hard, and a wave of emotion rushed through her. How had this watch ended up with Shpi? Could she possibly be? Shpi looked at Isabella, seeing the shock in her eyes as she stared at the watch. "This watch belonged to my son Emmanuel," Shpi said softly, her voice filled with sadness. Isabella's heart skipped a beat as the words hit her. Emmanuel, her Emmanuel. The realization struck her like a lightning bolt. The woman standing before her was the mother of the man she had once loved. Isabella's mind raced with memories of Emmanuel, his smile, his warmth, the love they had shared. She hadn't expected to find his mother in this cafe, let alone in such a painful situation. Tears welled up in her eyes as she slowly nodded, understanding now why the watch was so familiar. "I can't believe it," Isabella whispered. "Emmanuel was everything to me. I loved him with all my heart." Her voice broke, the weight of the past pressing down on her. Shpi's eyes filled with tears as well, but there was a quiet understanding between them. "He was my only son," Shpi said, her voice trembling. "He was everything to me too. But he started pulling away. He told me it was because of the pressure from his family." She paused, wiping away a tear. "He didn't want to disappoint anyone, especially his mother, Victoria. It tore him apart." Isabella nodded, feeling a deep connection to Shpi's words. "I know," she said softly. "Emmanuel tried to please everyone, but it was never enough. His family never accepted me, and it made everything so difficult. We both lost him in different ways." In that moment, the two women shared their grief, realizing how much they had both loved Emmanuel and how much they had both suffered because of the same forces: the pressure, the expectations, and the heartache. It was a moment of connection that neither of them had expected, but one they both desperately needed. As they sat in the quiet cafe, both women were lost in their thoughts. Shpi finally spoke, her voice low and full of pain. "Emmanuel's death, it was so sudden. I didn't even get to say goodbye." She paused, the weight of her words heavy in the air. "I never really understood what happened that day. All I know is he was with his wife Victoria, and then, he was gone." Isabella's heart ached as she listened. She had her own version of that tragic day, one that haunted her. I was with him, she said softly, her voice trembling. We were together when the accident happened. It was fast, too fast. One moment we were talking and the next, everything changed. She wiped away a tear. I couldn't save him, Chpi. I couldn't save the man I loved. Chpi looked at Isabella, her eyes filled with sorrow and understanding. We both lost him, didn't we? She said quietly. But it's not just the loss. Emmanuel was torn between his love for you and his family. I never accepted that. I wanted him to stay with me, to stay with his family. But I think he felt trapped. Isabella nodded, her eyes filled with regret. Victoria never accepted me. She blamed me for everything, for tearing the family apart. But I never wanted that. I only wanted to be with Emmanuel, to build a life together. The silence between them was thick, but it was a moment of shared understanding. Isabella stood and walked over to Chpi. I want to help, she said softly. You don't have to be alone in this. I can offer you a place to stay while you rebuild your life. Chpi looked at her, surprised but grateful. For the first time in years she felt the possibility of healing. Thank you, Isabella, she whispered, realizing that perhaps they could both find peace after so much pain. Victoria sat alone on a bench in the park, her face hidden in her hands as she cried softly. The years of pain and grief had worn her down, and her heart felt heavy with sorrow. Her son Emmanuel was gone, and she couldn't shake the feeling of blame that consumed her. As much as she wanted to find peace, the anger she felt toward Isabella, the woman she believed had taken Emmanuel from her, wouldn't let her move on. Isabella approached slowly, her footsteps soft but steady. She had heard that Victoria was here, and she knew this was the moment to try again. With a deep breath, Isabella sat down beside her, careful not to push her too fast. I know you're hurting, Victoria, Isabella said gently. I'm not here to make things harder for you. I just want you to know I understand. I'm sorry for the pain you've been through. Victoria wiped her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. You took him away from us, she said, her words filled with bitterness. He was my son and I never wanted to lose him. You came into our lives and took him away. He never came back to us the way he should have. Isabella's heart ached, but she didn't respond with anger or frustration. Instead, she nodded slowly, her voice calm. I understand why you feel that way. But I want you to know I loved him too. He was the love of my life, and I never wanted to hurt you or him. Victoria looked at her, the anger slowly fading as she listened. I blamed you for so long, she admitted, her voice shaky. But now, I see that you were hurting too. Isabella reached out, placing a hand gently on Victoria's. We can start to heal together. I'll help you find a home, a new beginning. You don't have to carry this pain alone anymore. Victoria hesitated, but in Isabella's eyes, she saw a sincerity that made her believe it was time to let go of the past. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. Isabella knew that helping Chpi and Victoria find a new home was just the beginning of their journey. The two women had suffered so much, and now, with her support, they could start to rebuild their lives. It wasn't easy, and the transition was full of challenges. There were moments of uncertainty, but Isabella remained patient and understanding, guiding them step by step. Together they found a small, cozy home in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it was a place they could call their own. Chpi and Victoria were nervous about the change, but with Isabella's encouragement, they began to feel a sense of hope. It was the first time in a long while that they could imagine a future without the weight of grief constantly pressing down on them. One day, Isabella decided it was time to introduce her son, Esteban, to Chpi and Victoria. Esteban had just returned from university, and Isabella thought it was the perfect opportunity for him to meet the women who had become so important in her life. Esteban was kind and thoughtful, and he immediately connected with them. His warmth and understanding helped bridge the gap between the past and the future, and Chpi and Victoria found comfort in his presence. As time went on, the bond between Isabella, Chpi, and Victoria deepened. They began to share their stories, their dreams, and their fears. Slowly, the emotional wounds they had carried for so long started to heal. Isabella, through her love and support, helped them find peace in their hearts. They were no longer alone, and for the first time in years, they felt the possibility of a fresh start. Together they were building a new life, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of healing. After months of rebuilding their lives, Chpi and Victoria were no longer consumed by the grief that had once defined their days. Slowly they began to find peace. The constant weight of sadness that had overshadowed everything started to lift. It wasn't easy and it didn't happen overnight, but with each passing day they grew stronger. They learned to accept the help and love that Isabella so generously offered, and in doing so they found a new sense of hope. Isabella had always been there for them, guiding them through the tough times and offering support when they needed it most. Her kindness and patience gave them the strength to move forward. Chpi and Victoria had been lost for so long, but now they could see the light at the end of the tunnel. They were no longer alone. The couple settled into their new home, a place that felt like a fresh start. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. They filled it with love, laughter, and the quiet comfort that came from knowing they had each other. They didn't have to face the world alone anymore. With Isabella by their side, they began to build a life that was no longer defined by their past pain. As time went on, Isabella, Chpi, and Victoria formed a new family, one that was built on forgiveness, understanding, and love. Esteban, Isabella's son, joined them in their journey, bringing his warmth and kindness into their home. Together they created a bond stronger than anything they had known before, a family united not by blood, but by the healing power of love and the willingness to forgive. The story ends with Isabella, Chpi, and Victoria sitting together at a table, sharing a warm meal. The air is filled with laughter and the quiet joy of new beginnings. As they eat, they realize that their past pain no longer controls them. They have faced their struggles, and through love and forgiveness they have healed. The once heavy weight of grief has lifted, and they are now free to embrace the future. For Chpi and Victoria, the years of sadness and regret are slowly fading away. They have learned to forgive, not just each other but themselves as well. Isabella too has found peace, knowing that her efforts to help have brought healing to these two women who were once lost in sorrow. Together they have built a new life, filled with hope and possibilities. They have become a family not by blood, but through the bonds of love, kindness, and understanding. The moral lesson of this story is simple yet powerful. No matter how broken you feel, love and forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds. No matter how lost or hurt we may feel, love and forgiveness have the power to bring us back to life and help us start again.